Good morning, everybody. Oh, beautiful brothers and sisters. It's really an honor and a privilege to be up here. Thank you so much, Reverend Du. I would like to preface my testimony with a note about true parents. My testimony is about my own physical parents, but true parents taught me and all of us, I believe, absolute attendance to God and showing us how to be true sons and daughters through the principle and feeling absolute parental and unconditional love from true parents. I want to stick to what I prepared out of respect for Reverend Du and time, but I really can't say enough about what we have been given from true parents. But actually, when Reverend Du asked for these testimonies, I thought about all I had been given from my parents just to be here and to find true parents, and I've always wanted to return that to my mom and dad and my ancestors and my brothers and sisters. So these were my thoughts when Reverend Du asked for these testimonies. I remember when my physical father passed away. He died when he was only 63, which was pretty young. He was a very good and conscientious Navy man. He was a lieutenant in the Navy, retired. He was not very religious. He grew up with a Chickasaw Indian heritage. He was very spiritual, but not very religious. But he was the best neighbor that anybody could have. He gardened a lot, and all of us kids pulled the weeds. So I really like pulling weeds. When I need to meditate, I really like to pull weeds. Yeah, he gardened a lot, and we always brought big grocery sacks of vegetables to our neighbors. And it wasn't in a poor area. Nobody, everybody bought vegetables at the grocery store, but those were homegrown vegetables, and everybody was really, always, our neighbors were really wonderful. I had a lot of respect for him, always. But when he passed away, I was in Korea. I was volunteering for delivering the Segeilbo newspaper. And my brothers actually bought me a ticket so I could come back for the funeral. And they asked me when I was on the plane to think of some words to give to the military chaplain to say for my dad. And I was really moved by my brothers' attitudes because they had wanted to kidnap me away from the church in the 1980s. So I was really grateful to Heavenly Parents for having a big change come over my family. My mother had stopped them from doing that back in the day, but how amazingly different their thinking was in the 1990s. I was really amazed. So when I was on the plane, I read the Bible, and when I arrived in Albuquerque, I had a chapter and verse ready for the chaplain and for my brothers. And it was the part where Jesus says to his disciples, if the son asks of his father for bread, will the father give him a stone? Or if the son asks for a fish, will the father give him a snake? And then Jesus says, if your own father knows how to give good things to his children, how much more does your Father in heaven know how to give good things to you? And I'm sorry, I don't have the chapter and verse to give you, but I remember that part, and it was that my dad was always thinking of us children and always doing his best to give us good things. There are 7 of us kids. So without saying so much, he just did things. My husband is actually more like that than me. He doesn't really say very much, but he really does things. I'm more like my mother. I have a lot to say because my mother and we always played a game about seeing things from different angles. We'd always try to see things from many different points of view. And my mother and I played a game about this many times. But my father's lesson was very strong to me because it also taught me not to see people as being as the same as each other. All the neighbors, some wanted some kind of vegetable, others didn't. Some needed their roses pruned back, and my dad was always there to help. So we knew that people weren't all the same, and that we didn't need to judge them as one being better than the other, but that they were different. They were all different to him, but he always felt each house was very interesting. So when I ended up having a lot of children, actually, even I never really thought I could have that chance. I thought I was very lucky. But what I really understood was that I should never compare them to each other. I should just really delight in their differences and just really see their strengths and try to help them out when they had something that they were unsure of. So that's what I wanted to share with you this morning, like my dad did with his neighbors and with us children, to just really love each other and really value our strengths and help each other through our weaknesses. Thank you so much.
Okay, good morning, brothers and sisters. I don't know how much 6 minutes is, sorry, but I'll try. Okay, so let's go back to my parents. My parents were born in Missouri and Nebraska, the Midwest. They were Navy. They were both in the Navy, and they married 1 month before World War II was over. And then my father and mother settled. That was in San Diego, California. They settled in Southern California. My father went to Bible school called Biola, and for 2 years he went to school there. By that time we had, there were 3 of us children. I was already born. And so in 1950, the year I was born, my parents took 3 children across the ocean in a ship to Japan and became missionaries. The first year that my father was a missionary, my parents were missionaries, my father studied Japanese, intensive study in Japanese in Karuizawa, Japan, is Nagano prefecture, in the mountains, and he mastered what you can master in 1 year. He took us children and my mother to a small village in that same prefecture, and he started witnessing. He witnessed, he had no car, but he had a bicycle, a motorcycle. So he went out to the villages, nearby villages. One of the villages that he went to was called Mochizuki, a little mountain village in Nagano. While he was there, he witnessed to one grandma, and that grandma had a pretty large family, so then started having Bible study at her house. Then it became so many people that at some point they decided to build a church. So by that time he brought us children, and so we were introduced to the church family. Eventually they did build a church. And one young lady who was 16 years old became a Christian, along with other Christians. A few years later, she came out to Tokyo. She attended Japan Christian College. It was called JCC. She was in that college while she was, witnessed to by a Unification Church member. And that was 1961. So I'm not going to tell you who she is, but some of you already know. But to make a long story short, one day she and Mrs. Kamiyama, I was living with the Kamiyama family in 1977, and she and Mrs. Kamiyama joined the church around the same time, so they were very close. She was pregnant with her first child, this lady. She started talking with Mrs. Kamiyama, and Mrs. Kamiyama said, "Oh my goodness, the missionary that witnessed to you sounds almost like Mary's father. The same name. What was it?" And then they got excited and called me up. I was teaching English at Colonel Han's house at that time, and they called me up and were so excited. And so then we talked, and yes, that was my father. My father witnessed to this lady. When she was 16 years old, she became a Christian. She became a Unification Church member. And now she was in America. And not only that, she was blessed with an American man. And she was pregnant with, I believe, her second child at the time I found that out. So then we started talking. And over the years, by the way, I joined in Japan in 1975. I joined this church in Japan. I came back to America and in that same year. And I was at, am I shaking? I feel like I'm shaking. And I did many things in our church, but one of the things yeah, I was with the Kamiyama family, and I had gone to the MFTs with Mrs. Kamiyama translating for her, so I met many people. But during the many years, which is 39 years since I met this lady, I have seen her many times, and she always said, "How is Kyariko sensei?" That's my father. How is my spiritual father? So this woman always considered my father her spiritual father. And so it is so amazing to me that I followed, in many ways, I followed my father's footsteps in the fact that he was very industrious, not industrious. He loved to explore things and to go to many countries. And so, to make a long story short, that woman is actually in this Las Vegas church. She's one of our oldest members in our Japanese church, one of the first Japanese members in the church. Do you know what? We were talking last week. She was here last week, and by the way, she's not here today, apparently. But we were sitting down talking, and I said, "Oh, by the way, Chizuko-san, Chizuko Runyon, when is your birthday?" "Oh," she said, "August 6th. I said, "Are you kidding me? That's my daughter's birthday. My daughter was born on August 6th, 50 years after she was. On her 50th birthday, my daughter was born. So, I mean, how can you make that up? So, I've always been amazed at so many things in my life, how God led me and how, things happen. But that is like really amazing. How can I top that one? That God was actually guiding me way before I even imagined. By the way, she even knew my name. Not my first name, my middle name. Because at that time, they used to call me Beth-chan. So it was real. And when my parents passed away, I looked at these tiny pictures. They were about 1 by 1 or 2 by 2. And I got a microscope, and then I saw her. I saw her in the picture, around 16 years old, and I saw me. So we were actually like 14 years difference. She's 80 years old. Can you believe it? So please, next time you see Chizuko Runyon, give her a hug and know that she is one of our oldest Japanese church members.
Hello, my name is Ilya Hack. Mr. Hack, whatever. I figured out I was doing this at 9:30. So basically I'm psyching myself out, but let's see what happens. Yeah, so basically I just want to talk about it, I guess, the way I kind of basically grew up with. I'll start with my parents. My parents were 2 missionaries that went to Russia, and I was basically born there. That's how I came to be. And very grateful for true parents and heavenly parents for that. And so my parents are also very strong with the missionary work, and they're very, very vertical. And the one, you can see even my mother, at one point, Saturdays, she would just sit down and listen to True Father's lectures all morning before she goes to work. Sat down all morning to do it. And so coming from that context, the one thing I feel like, I guess, really supported me in my life was heavenly parents, especially since it was emphasized very much in my house. Prior to GPA, this past year of CARP, Kira-san's taking a picture. It's interesting. Hey! Okay, yeah, but prior to GPA or prior to CARP, I had a lot of things that I just thought was normal. Of course, I had the whole unique thing of really having music in my life, but I felt like everything was normal, and I didn't really think there was something so grand about life. It was every day, next day, next day, next day. It's a schedule kind of thing. Sometimes I didn't even think the days are really differentiated. They're just meshed together. So for me, I didn't feel like there was a greater. Even though I believed in God, I had God pretty much my whole life, I didn't really have him as like a feeling, He wasn't so strong in my life. And the one thing my mom taught me growing up, especially with her her strong faith, is that even though I do everything I do, mistake, victory, everything, she says to me, God is trying to tell you something. And being me, I was ignoring it and saying, nah, Mom, it's not true. I'm not listening to that, And so that still stuck with me because she kept saying it every single time I did something. Of course, not every single second of the day, but, And even though my parents were always working, I don't really see them as much as I wanted to. That's one thing my mom really came back to me. And I can really see the faith in my parents. And so going to GPA and coming to CARP, the one thing that came back to me as I was growing up was that. One big thing that came back into my life was that. I felt like every single point of my life, God was part of it. Heavenly Parents was part of it. True Parents was part of it. Every part. I guess I'm very grateful for Heavenly Parents and True Parents, and I'm also think that the one moral I'm trying to say is God is always there. God is always guiding, and even though you don't think so, and even though you deny it, He's still always there. And yeah, I guess that's what I wanted to say. Yeah.
So I actually did not know I was going to come up until I just heard my name. It was really interesting because I sent, this past week, I sent Reverend Du a prayer of True Fathers, Reverend Moon's prayer, and I was so inspired by it. I actually just wanted to read the prayer today, but he didn't respond, so I was like, okay, I guess I'm not giving the prayer, but I kind of felt when I was looking at Mr. Smith and he said, it's going to be okay, I really felt like God was saying, you have something to share with your brothers and sisters, and I really want you to do that. So get over your fears and just do it. So I'm up here because I feel like I want to share this blessing. Yes, I am a second generation of this movement, and this past summer, I went to Cheonpyeong as a spiritual retreat in Korea, created by True Parents, to really heal your life. And I went there because I really wanted to heal my relationship with my parents, and I felt that it was really hard for me still to forgive them. Yeah. I cannot explain that experience, but it was good. That's the end of the story there. Anyway, so I came back. At the end, I came back. It was a big condition that I made in my life, I think. And so when I came back, I began doing a condition. I did 100 bows, which is super hardcore for me. I was like, I never do that. My mom was like, do a bowing condition. It will work. So I did bowing conditions, and I started to read True Father's prayers. And when I began to read these prayers before I started praying myself, I started to understand a depth of heart that I didn't appreciate before. And it was a heart that my parents actually have. Same heart my parents have. And what's really interesting is because I really judged that kind of heart growing up. I always complained. I thought my parents were the worst parents because my parents didn't love me enough. I thought that when they challenged me, when they told me you can't go to hang out with your friends at night, or you can't do all these things, I felt like they were so strict to me. I felt they didn't love me. Or when they had these high expectations for me, I felt judged. I felt unaccepted. And I'm realizing a really big message in my life recently from my mentors and from the people around me. Being sensitive to God's love is not just being sensitive to the kind of love that you like, the motherly love, the embracing love, but it's also being sensitive to this fatherly heart, which really challenges you to grow. And this is a heart that this kind of love I don't really like sometimes, to be honest. It's kind of tough it's like a coach, I really feel like God, that's true love, though. That is the essence of true love. It's kind of like that challenging heart to help you really become who your true self. So I just want to read this prayer, and then I'll say just how it helped me. This is True Father's prayer. It's called, "Please let us become children who are able to be held in the embrace of your heart." It says, "O Father, there are many gatherings of people in this world, But in the midst of inadequate children have gathered together, in the midst of an environment which has nothing to offer, we're not seeking to possess you, Father, with the standard that you are seeking. Since we seek to repent before you, Father, through the flow of true, deep minds, reflecting on our inadequate selves, we earnestly hope and desire that you will allow this to be a time when we mobilize our minds and we are able to thirst for a relationship with your situation. Father, through your infinite authority and power, you have had dominion over this earth and many people. Since we are longing for your mercy and grace more than your power, when we reflect on your words and call you our Father, please raise up a revolution in our hearts and make our earnest minds want to explode and be held in the embrace of your heart. Please bring about a change of heart and let us be able to be accepted as people who are yours. Since we truly desire to be like that, Father, please come to us here. Your situation must become our situation, and your hope must become our hope, and your heart, our hearts, must be able to become one. And if you are faced with sorrow, we should be sorrowful too. If you are joyful, we should be joyful too. Since we have gathered together in this place, putting you first, we are thirsting to become your people who are able to become one with you as substantial beings who are your objects. We earnestly hope and desire that you will please act at this time to eliminate anything which is not appropriate to that. Please act to raise up original minds which are completely able to conform and be absorbed there. Please act and make us be able to be aware that we are your sons, aware that we are your daughters, and earnestly hoping and desiring that you will let us be able to appear unashamed with the authority of heaven as your children, who have been established in relation to your will. We have humbly prayed in the holy name of true parents, amen. And I know these words are like, so I always were like, oh, my parents, like, they all had this high standard of love. True parents are so high standard. I'm never going to be like this. But when I read this prayer, actually, I see that there's a part of my heart there. Maybe it's not always there. You know what I mean? I focus so much on my fallen nature, like the things that I don't like about myself, that I don't feel like are not godly, that I do feel unashamed. I don't feel like a child of God. But true parents, they're God's true children. And I feel like when we have a relationship with them, and also when I appreciate my parents who really are trying to live like them, I also can grow my heart as a real child. So, yeah, it's still not perfect. I'm still struggling. But I feel like God's really working in my life through true parents and my own parents. So that's it.
Hi. Good morning. Yes, I'm also known as Sunshine. Nice to meet you. See, this is the one thing that's great about technology. When you forget to print out your notes, you can just go to this thing called a phone, and they're right there. So good morning. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Kinesha McDaniel. For those of you who do, hello again. And I am the daughter of two wonderful people in this room, Jonathan and Rachel. Stand up, Mom. Stand up, come on. I want to brag. Those are my awesome parents right there. Sorry, I feel like bragging about them for a little bit. And yeah, let me just pull my notes here. Okay, so I'd like to share with you one of the many lessons that actually my parents have been teaching me all throughout my life, and it's actually been pretty prominent in my life. So when I was little and growing up in this wonderful city, Las Vegas, I was actually subject to bullying. I was a victim of bullying a lot. Like a lot of kids would see my teeth or my smile and they'll call me gap mouth, gap tooth, space case, like all kinds of things. And then even as I got older, the bullying got a little bit more intense where they would say, oh, you're the wrong color for this. I kind of like it, but I kind of like it. But like, oh, you're the wrong color for this particular position. Or we were looking for someone, you know, a little bit more Asian, not necessarily, you know, you. And so it got a little bit more intense. And it did bring me down a bit, quite a bit. And a lot of times I'll talk to my parents about it and I say, oh, what's wrong with me? Like, why can't I get this? Why is everything going wrong? I felt that everything was just falling apart. And it was tough to go through it, mostly because in school I had many different races of friends, many different ethnicities of friends. You always saw me hanging out with everybody else. And even in college, there were people who didn't really know me, and they'd come up to me and they'll say, "Why can't you hang out with your people?" And I'm like, my people? I thought they're my people. I'm like, no, your people. I'm like, who are my people? And then even some of them would say, "Oh, for shame, why aren't you speaking your language?" I'm like, "English? I speak English?" Like, "No, your language." Okay, I'm confused. What's my language? And so that kind of thing would really come at me intensely. And I'll talk to my mom, my dad about it. And once again, I was, really sad, really put down. But one thing that they always said to me was, "You're God's daughter. God didn't make a mistake in creating you. When he created you just the way he wanted you to be. He didn't create you to look like this person or that person or Beyonce or Rihanna. No, he created you to look like Kinesha. He had a vision of what Kinesha should look like, what Kinesha should be, and he created you." And I thought, oh, okay, that's pretty profound. And then my dad, he said, "Well, for those of the ones who are making fun of your teeth, why are they looking in your mouth in the first place? Like, if anything, they should be looking at your face, not your mouth." And I thought, oh yeah, why are they looking in my mouth? And I have carried that lesson with me all throughout my life, especially because, I'm not a college student anymore. Right, Josh? I'm not a college student anymore, and yet still there are people who don't know me who come up and say, "Oh, you're the wrong color," or "Oh, you should wear this," or "Oh, you should do that." Like, they have the whole list of things I should do. But I just think, God didn't create me to look like that. God created me to look pretty much like this. Thank you. And like, although there's always room for improvement, although you can always, maybe, work out more. Work out more, eat cake less, But even still, like, even though there's always room for improvement, God did not make a mistake in creating you. You were never a mistake. No matter what the situation you go through in life, that's what my parents always taught me. No matter what I go through in life, no matter the ups or the downs, the lefts, the rights, the zigzags, no matter what happens, I was never a mistake. I was never an oops, this is in the wrong spot, or oops, I used the wrong ink for this one. It was never an oops. And with that, what I try to do is I try to basically live my life as how true parents have lived their life. And basically how they live their life is being the same person with everybody they're around. Whether they're with them or against them, they still love them. Whether they're going to Ocean Challenge or they're in Las Vegas, or all throughout True Parents' life, they've lived the same. They've been the same. They've been one True Parents. You never saw them being two different people in two different situations. They're the same person. And they're like that because of their love for God. Their love for God and their love for what God is basically teaching them. And so with that, plus combined with the lessons that my parents teach me, my goal is to be like them. My goal is to be the same no matter what. So even if I'm overly bubbly or like super serious, I'm still Kinesha. And that's like the definition of who I am. So that's all I wanted to share.
Hey, good morning, family. So this is a really interesting, different kind of service, isn't it? Do you like it? Actually, I felt this is kind of heavenly. I think maybe when we pass to the spirit world, then one process we'll all go through is, and now give a testimony about your parents. Would that be a bad thing? I think it's a good chance. So one thing I wanted to share before I talk about my parents is that I think, you're all here. I think you have special parents by being here. I think all of you do, and you all should have a chance to share about that. And I would actually kind of be interested to hear many stories. And then also, there would be some surprises. There's some things that our parents have done that we actually didn't know, and that we're going to say, they did that, you did that, and we'll be so shocked. But anyway, it's a beautiful thing. So my parents, okay, back to them. Okay, my parents, just in an essence, the thing that my mother and father both did for me was they instilled in me a sense of put others first. I think they're doing that, but not only in words, but in actions. Like in daily actions, we live with our parents. We see everything 24/7. So they acted it. They really did. They were sincere, and they put me on a course in my life by doing that, by being that way, just being that who they are that way. They put me on a certain path, a certain course, and I think it was inevitable that I somehow. I met the UC, of course, right? And when I was 20 years old, it was kind of an inevitable thing. Having that education and kind of, experience in my heart, something would have happened. If it wasn't a UC, it would have been something, on a heavenly, godly, with a characteristic like that. But I'm so lucky it was the UC, okay, with two parents. So, like for example, my mother, how does she do it on like a day-to-day level? I mean, if she was cooking and then if the toast was a little burnt or if the pancakes were a little dry, she would put them aside for herself, and then she'd remake everything for someone else and serve them the best for others, I saw that. I thought, wow, okay, that's kind of, I just watched that when I was a little kid. And my father the same. I have some amazing story about my father and World War II story. I don't know if that's have time for that, but well, maybe not. So let's see, yeah. So they definitely did put others first, and then one of the things that is what's one of the most treasures for me right now, okay, is my wife and my daughter. So then, if they hadn't taught me that, if they hadn't been that way for me, then I really wonder and I kind of doubt that I would have had. I really disbelieve I would ever had a wife like my wife or my daughter. I just don't think so. We can't take it for granted. It's not automatic that we have something so special and something really good like that. So the best thing in my life right now, they're in spirit world, my parents, but then remaining with me, I have something so special. I think that wouldn't have happened if they hadn't have been that way, taught me that way. I wouldn't have met UC. I wouldn't have been matched, right? So my daughter it's an adoption, and so one of our church specialties. So it's a really beautiful thing. I'm so happy about that. And so, yeah. Well, I think that the chance to, share sincerely and from the heart and deeply about ourselves and our family, that's the most powerful thing. That's what makes us as our family. So I'm grateful to Reverend Dew for such a unique idea for this morning service. So thank you, Reverend Dew.